Hey Steve, what's up?
Hey man, not a lot. Just excited to be back.
I know, so what are you going to pick for us to discuss?
What's the theme this month?
I don't think we should do any more theme months till next October.
Aw, why not?
Dude, it's kind of gimmicky and feels forced, and I don't know, it just seems like it gets really old really quick.
That's not true at all, man. Theme months let people know what to expect. We should do a theme month every month.
Steve, that sounds kind of weak. What would they even be about?
Well, since January's the first month, we could review TV pilots, since it's the start of something new.
I guess that could maybe work.
February's got Valentine's Day, so we could talk about love.
Kinda sappy.
In March, we could do trilogies because it's the third month of the year.
Dude.
Then in April, because of April Fool's Day, we could do comedies. Then in May, because it's the month of Aries, we could talk about wars. Then in June, because it's the start of summer, we could talk about summer movies. Then in July, we could review fireworks.
This is kind of getting abstract, bro.
Then in August, we could review anything that starts with A.
Yeah.
And then in September, we could do snakes.
Steve, I'm assuming there's something deeply wrong with you, and that's what's kept you away from the show the last month. You probably need to go and get serious help, and if I were a true friend, I'd understand and support you in that decision. But I'm a selfish asshole with a show to run and need a co-host. So get your shit together and podcast.
Okay. Bastard.
Gentlemen, the time has come once again to discuss things.
Right off the bat. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Geeky Gentlemen, and you won't believe it, mark your calendars, because here, as we record on the very first day of 2016, I have Steve Baxi and Milan Jeftik in the same video.
Oh my god.
It's like a thing that's supposed to happen consistently, but never does. And so let's kind of keep this mentality going throughout the new year, guys. Let's see how long we can go until we break a streak. Next week it's going to be like neither of you are here.
It's like getting a good episode of Dexter season 6.
Oh, ouch.
Well, actually, it's like getting a good episode of any. It's like getting any good Dexter episodes after season 3. But
oh, wow, ouch. Okay. No, I mean, it's been fun. I've been doing videos with a lot of people that I don't really know very well, so there's a little bit of that it's like having sex with someone for the first time. You don't really know what you like, so you're both just trying different things, and like it's kind of working out, and you don't want to be mean about it at all.
That's hilarious.
It's the best way I could think of to describe it. So overall, it was a fun experience doing Geeky Gentleman episodes with different people and everything, but it's good to have the basics back. Before we get into anything else, everyone, I want to apologize if you hear me sniffle or blow my nose or something during this video. I'm getting over a cold that I got the day after Christmas, and I'm over everything except for everything needs to get the fuck up out my head. So I'm working on that part. But anyway, Steve, since he is rejoining us, since he was not there at all for holiday month, Steve has picked our topic. And what are we talking about this month, Steve?
Okay, so right now we are talking about world building, and particularly world building at the expense of things like story or characterization. The big thing coming to mind for me right now is something like Lord of the Rings, where like not The Hobbit, but just the first Lord of the Rings book itself, where like half of that is nothing but setting up everything that's about to happen in the next 2 books. And understanding the geopolitics of that world before you get anywhere near close to a catalyst for a story.
Certainly. And it's one of those things where, like, world building, I tend to enjoy a lot, and I thought about this after you gave me the topic, and, you know, how often I've said the words, I so want a sequel to X, Y, Z, on this show alone staggers my mind. Because I can just fall in love with something when it just has great world building and totally forgive it for any plot holes that it might have. Lord of the Rings I have completely different issues with, The
Yeah.
world building stuff is really cool. It is all in the plot there. But, no, there's so many times where, like, some can have kind of an okay plot, and I'm just like, man, the plot's nothing really amazing or anything. I'm just so in love with the world that I want to see more stuff done in here. Like, we did Krampus, and everything keeps coming back to Krampus, and, go see that movie if you haven't. But we did Krampus, and I'm just like, holy shit, I just really want a sequel to this, because I want more of it. I want to see more in what this world is like, and instead of being at a home this time, I want us to like go to Krampus's North Pole or whatever. So yeah, I can absolutely fall in love with world building. How about you, Milan?
It's something that is good when you do it right.
Really? That's all you got.
I feel like that could be said for about, everything, really.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, pretty much anything you can do if you do it right, you can get something out of it. It's especially with world building. It's one of those things where you have the character. The greatest piece of world building I've ever seen in any kind of fictional medium, when it comes to like limited resources, is the Seven Soldiers of Victory. I mean, I've recently reread it. And it's just like, we mentioned before that it's a purely spherical story, It has no beginning, no middle, no end. Well, it has an end, but it just kind of throws you into to the feel of this place. And it's one of those things. I've been also reading Secret Six by Gail Simone.
Sweet, I love that stuff.
I know it is. It's great. And you have, especially, it's great in like, with like larger continuities. You can play around with different stuff there, because with the Secret Six, it's and with the Seven Soldiers of Victory, it all kind of falls in between these larger monoliths. It's like you have these large towers of quote unquote continuity and false life in a way, in this kind of fake reality that's has a tone and has different type of different archetypes filling in different roles, and the Secret Six and the Seven Soldiers of Victory, they all kind of fall in the middle and what would accumulate at the bottom,
Yeah, and like Paul Dini kind of did some stuff like that in DC Universe too. Like, I didn't love his detective or what was the other one that he did with all the not the birds,
Gotham City Sirens.
Yeah, Gotham City Sirens. Like, at one point, they meet a guy who calls himself the Realtor, and he's like the guy that sells supervillains their lairs. Like, just that something like that would have to exist eventually in a world with comic book superheroes and supervillains. I mean, of course that would have to be the case, because, Joker's always got some kind of, like, abandoned amusement park or like, creepy novelty factory or something that he set up shop in. It's like, where does he find these places?
I mean, that was the brilliance of the early Michelini Layton stuff with Iron Man, and introducing Justin Hammer as the guy that, since Iron Man only fights armored guys, someone's got to be building and financing all of them, and there he is.
Yeah. And I don't know how I felt about Hammer and Iron Man 2. But
I mean, he's awful in that, but in the comics, it was a brilliant idea.
He's awful, but the performance is just so much fun you have to ignore it.
That's that movie in a nutshell, is that it's so much fun, but it's shit.
Yeah. I wouldn't go so far as shit, but fair enough.
It's not as bad as Thor the Dark World, but anyway, I digress.
Yeah, Thor the Dark World could have used more world building. No. Thor the Dark World is symptomatic of the problem that you're talking about, because they try so hard to set up this world, and they do some, like, that fucking awesome-ass funeral scene is probably the best thing in the movie, but at the same time, it's just like, okay, how about instead of this kind of stuff, or instead of Natalie Portman making googly eyes at Chris Hemsworth, we give some scenes to Malekith, so we know exactly what the fuck he wants. Because seriously, I didn't know that was what's his name, the Ninth Doctor, until after I walked out of that theater.
Yeah, Christopher Eccleston.
Yeah, I didn't know that was him until after I walked out of the theater. And that's disappointing. Like, that movie, yeah, Thor: The Dark World is one of the only movies from Phase 2 I've seen multiple times, and I don't know why.
I've seen all of them multiple times except Ant-Man.
Fair enough. So yeah, world building is one of those things where, yeah, there's some really cool stuff in Thor: The Dark World, and I guess you could make the point that world building can sometimes it can act like a distraction, like an illusion to how good a thing is. I guess you could make that argument for Avatar, but I think that was kind of the point of that movie.
Avatar slips back and forth. I think the big thing that comes to mind as doing this in the best possible way, and people can't see this Skype conversation, so they don't know that Ian's Skype avatar is Darkseid. But if you read Jack Kirby's Fourth World stuff, and you look at how he sets up New Genesis and Apocalypse and the characterizations and the hierarchies and such, I think that's the best way to not only tell a really good story and give us great characterization, but also create a world where those characters have reasons to behave the way they do. That the world building informs the characters and their relationships and their dynamics, and it's actually like a story force.
Well, in a way like that, it's mostly just like it's the stage versus the actor. It's how you go about it. If you're gonna have a lavish set with all these amazing background details and the actors, and the characters suck, like you got a great fucking set, but the actors are shitty.
My high school performances.
Exactly. And it's just like, if you're gonna have amazing actors and little to no world, I mean, then it's just, you're mostly focusing on the actors and they're building the world with their actions and their words and their portrayals. I mean, there's with a story you have to have a nice mixture of the two. Like anything, you got to have both. You got to have both to fully, that's the thing. With world building, it's one of those things that people have been doing it, humans have been doing it for so long, that you gotta try to do something new, or at the very least entertaining and something that stands out. Like that's Seven Soldiers of Victory.
Yeah.
It's an exercise in story building.
And I think it's important to note that not everyone even realizes that they are doing world building when they first write a story.
Let me just
simply you creating the inciting incident for your story creates a universe that you are realizing after you get to a certain point.
Yeah. Steve, I'm echoing just a bit, but
sorry.
Before we get away from it, I do want to bring up this point real quick, because I think world building is often very, very central to plot as opposed to character progression. And something I think I hear people say a lot is, well, it's more of a character piece, so you shouldn't judge the plot very harshly. And I don't agree with that kind of an argument, because at that point I just make the argument, then why don't we just put these guys in a room and have them have conversations? Because that could certainly still be interesting, but if it's not about the plot, then why do we need a plot? It's like that same kind of thing as, oh, I only go to a movie to see the action. Well, at that point, why not just watch fireworks? And so I wanted to make that point before we got off into it. But yeah, there's this whole thing about where, just by the very nature of the conceit of how you want to tell your story, you have to have all this baggage of world building put in behind it, and that can, some people don't know how to do that.
And that's
don't
weird.
know how to build a world accurately.
And that's weird, because if you think about it, that's just kind of that's our function as a species. We make little artificial realities to try to make sense of the weird shit around us. I mean, look at the world, look at history, look at everything. It's just, people think differently in different places, and if you go to a place, people think and look, and their perception of reality is not the same as yours, and their culture has built a world. Look at China, look at Russia, look at it, like, even the class structure. Look, like, you go to somebody living in the ghetto and you ask them, what's life all about? What's your, do you have hopes for the future? And you go, hope? What's that? and you go to somebody with, from a affluent family over the bridge, just for example, like Australia. Everyone says, like when I hear Americans talk about Australia and how great it is and how wonderful everyone is, and I'm like, Australia, like there's more insane people here in Australia than there is anywhere else in the world, like population size. And
I mean, you'd have to be.
Oh, not
Think?
No, that's the thing. Everyone, it's this sense of just, there are different worlds and they're all just kind of stuck together. You have groups of people that kind of say, this is my world, this is the type of person you are and that person is. People classify each other. Even
Trading Places.
and not even trading places, just
No, Trading Places, the film, really does deal with that, though. Where, like, the Eddie Murphy, Dan Aykroyd film.
Yeah, it's a good call.
That's what that entire movie is about. Is like you have no conception of what it's like to live this life, and from your perspective, it may be easier than people make it out to be, or it may be more complicated than you imagine it to be in the Trading Places dynamic. But every single life has its own set of problems. Like I was thinking about this earlier this week, actually, and I'm surprised I'm bringing it up here because I didn't think I would. And I think I might have briefly mentioned it somewhere in History Month, but you have the idea of, like, I hear people do this where they compare human suffering, and I've just gotten to the point where I don't think that's something you can do. Like, when a terrible thing happens to you, it's a terrible thing, and it's the most terrible thing to happen to you in its own way, and in your own way, and you can't compare that to something else. And what came into my head when I was thinking about this with the historical background was German concentration camps versus American Japanese concentration camps. And, like, I've heard people try to compare and rationalize these two things, and comparing, like, the Japanese camps to the Jewish camps and saying, well, see, they weren't as bad. I'm like, I suppose if you really, really try to make kind of an objective argument, maybe, but there's just no place for that. You're talking about personal suffering, and they're both equally awful in their own ways. You can't, like, look at George Takei and say, you didn't have it as bad as the Jews. I'm like, no, he still had a really, really awful experience, and you can't undercut that by comparing it to something that in your mind might be worse, but you didn't live through either of them, most likely. So yeah, that's just something that you've got me thinking about now, Milan.
And I mean, obviously, there's definitely shared spheres of influence and experience between certain types, like concentration camps experience. Even if they're not all entirely the same, there's some commonalities. But that's still not to say that those two experiences are identical for two sets of people. This has me thinking of that Joss Whedon quote I really like that I put at the beginning of my Age of Ultron video, where he says that the way memory works is that it's always a reconstruction. So you're always learning to tell a story about your life, and so life itself becomes a story. And it all goes back to almost like that Wittgenstein idea of translating people's experiences, and the fact that we can do that to any degree whatsoever without some kind of objective key of what equals what is kind of miraculous.
Yeah, and like I guess something that I find interesting to get this more connected to world building again is how much we try to display experiences which no human being could ever, will ever, or has ever had. And I guess I go to either Star Trek or Doctor Who really quickly, since those are really kooky sci-fi properties. You always feel, when it's done well, you often feel for the Doctor and feel bad for him. And we talked about this when we did our video on immortality. Like, immortality is such a weird concept to feel empathy or sympathy for a character who is immortal, because you cannot possibly imagine what that is like, but somehow you're able to imagine what that is like. Like, you shouldn't be able to do that. You're never going to live for thousands of years, so you shouldn't be able to empathize with someone who's having problems that a person who's lived for thousands of years would have, but the show makes you do it. And that's really fascinating. And it all goes back to the world that they build around the character for him to live in.
And also building around experiences that have some semblance of commonality. Like just the... I guess I just go to Buffy because that's another Whedon thing, and he's always on my mind. But the idea that magic can be explained or built around a person who doesn't use magic in our world by making it a metaphor for sexuality and drug addiction. That there are elements of that fantastical idea that regardless of ever feeling it, you can understand what it might be like, and through that you're able to feel empathy or sympathy or come to an understanding of what that experience is.
I feel like we talked about this with that... God damn it, I can never remember that fucking movie with the kids who are addicted to doing, like, magic or whatever. I feel like we've had this conversation.
Oh, I think I know what you're talking about, too. There's a Powerpuff Girls episode like this, too.
Yeah. And so it's interesting how they parallel those things and they make them interesting. But at the same time, there are episodes of shows like Doctor Who and Star Trek where the situation isn't really a metaphor for anything I can think of. Like, I'm watching through Voyager now, and so far I'm surprisingly impressed. I have a little bit of nervousness, but so far it's been really good. I'm in season 2. And there was an episode where, like, seriously, every single argument is a metaphor or a summation of Oppenheimer and the bomb.
Oh,
every single scene, like, the guy throws out every single argument you can possibly make, and that Oppenheimer did make for the bomb, and that Oppenheimer eventually made against the bomb. One of the most fascinating people around the atomic age. So, like, you have things where you can parallel to that, but then you have other things where I'm like, okay, that's not at all a situation I feel like anyone has ever or could ever conceivably deal with, and it's not related to anything that I think is even remotely metaphorical. Like, I'm trying to think of a good sci-fi episode where it just does something where it's not really a metaphor, it's just a really, really... Oh, Looper.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think that's a metaphor for anything. It's just a really nutso situation, and it's a fascinating world that they build to develop that nutso situation. What if you time traveled and had to kill yourself?
I mean, Terminator's got the exact same thing, too, with John Connor being a paradox. Like, that's not exactly relatable or metaphoric for anything either. Yeah,
and time travel's a really good well to dig from, then. That's a bad metaphor. I'm sorry. No, it's one of those things where, like, you have people write these situations and imagine entire worlds around them. And if storytelling is this thing where it's supposed to make us relate to each other and understand and come to deeper connections with our fellow man, then how come we get some just really weird shit that doesn't teach you a lesson or help you get to any understanding? It's just a really interesting idea.
Yeah, sometimes a tree is just a tree.
Yeah, something with that aspect of creating a world and making something. It's just at a certain point, people just have way too much free time, and it's just like, hey, what if this thing was a thing? And people just think about things, and they create situations, little artificial realities where this situation makes sense. And that's just, storytelling is just what humans do to try to, essentially what we do, we go through time and we mythologize the crazy shit that happens through culture. And it's just like, we can, like, look at the punks, for example. Like, you have these people who did drugs and whatever, these crazy skinheads and just this insanity, this crazy shit. And now when you look back at it now, and when you think of a punk, you think, hey, there's like, all those guys are old. And they're all just, like in their 60s or whatever. And it's just like, what the fuck happened? Well, let's tell a story about it. They tell stories about their experience, and they try to add in elements of the fantastic to try to add a bit of flavor to a story. If you look at Sandman, it's just,
It's the greatest thing ever written.
Essentially, it's.
I'm glad I got everyone here back onto a Sandman kick, I guess.
I was actually just about to start rereading that because you kept talking about it.
It's so fucking good.
It is.
Sorry, Milan, go on.
Yeah, but you just I recently did that fucking Sound of Her Wings thing.
And I'm mad at you for that.
Why?
Because I wanted to voice Morpheus in it.
Yeah, but you're the guy who did the voice was better.
Fuck you.
No, he
That's
was
just such a mean thing to say.
No, but it's true. I mean, I dig you, man, but he had that whole fucking thing with the voice and whatever,
Yeah. You really gotta work on the pacing of your editing, I'm sorry. It's so awkwardly paced sometimes. You gotta get better at that.
Yeah, well, what are you gonna do?
No, what you do is you get better at your pacing. Anyway, Sandman is another great example because he takes from all mythologies. He takes from the literary canon in such a fascinating fucking way. That's the thing I absolutely love about that book is it is unquestionably literature because it borrows from the same canon that all other proper literature does. And it's just so self-aware and fascinating, and so he creates this world that feels like it's always been there, and it's so connected and in touch with our own culture that it feels so right, but there's still something very mysterious and unknown and that you're trying to discover as you read through that, and you're introduced to all these new rules and concepts, and oh my God, Sandman.
Well, it's literature. That's a thing. Everyone, it's part of the canon because if you think about it, he just had the perfect concept. Oh, the Lord of Dreams, fucking Morpheus. Of course, everything would make sense.
The thing I love about it is okay. So you got Homer who writes down Iliad and Odyssey, and those are where it quote unquote starts. And then you have, what's his name? Fucking Virgil, who writes the Aeneid, and his story starts with a minor character. So it really is the first spin-off. His story starts with a minor character from the Iliad who, escapes Troy at the last minute, and that's where you have the Aeneid, and that goes on and does its thing. And then you have Dante, who writes, the Inferno, and who guides him through hell? Virgil. And who do we meet? All these other characters and his not only literary characters but historical characters. And then you have Shakespeare who references all of that shit. And then you have Gaiman building on top of that. It's a snake eating its own goddamn tail. The canon of Sandman is absolutely fascinating.
Well, I think to bring that back.
Also, just really quickly. Morpheus is a character that shows up in the Aeneid. All right, go ahead, Steve.
I was just to say to bridge that back to world building. I think one of the most interesting things about mythology when you start studying it on a macro level is that it is very interconnected, and that there is, to a degree, quite a bit of continuity to keep up with, and that in a way makes mythology a little bit more real, and it makes the metaphor that comic books are a new mythology. It gives that whole thing a little bit more weight. But to bring that back to world building, I think it's important that when you start doing things like that, and maybe this is where we should address some of the issues when you do that over other things like story and characterization. I think it's important that world building has to be. It does not have to be crucial to the plot, but it has to be consistent from areas of the plot. For example, you look at something like the way the world is structured in Sandman, and the way you define what gods are and what dreams are and stuff. If you ever write a story in that universe that deals with a different definition of dream that you haven't already explained, then you have to explain it and how it relates to those other concepts, and if you don't, it's a problem.
Oh, no, not Dream, but Black Racer is a huge problem for that one.
Yeah.
Because you have Death, who is the be-all, end-all of death, and then you have the Black Racer, who is also the be-all, end-all of death, and they're not at all the same character in any sense. Because, like, you have a scene briefly in Sandman where, like, Martian Manhunter sees Morpheus, and he's standing right next to John Constantine, who sees him as the Morpheus that, you know, we, the reader, constantly see. But Martian Manhunter sees him as this weird, fiery, floaty head thing. And so you get the idea that Morpheus is just seen as whatever race's mythology depicts him as. And so you could kind of maybe make that argument with Death, but the Black Racer acts nothing like Death, which is the problem.
Right.
Well, that's the thing. There was this Captain Atom book that kind of used Death, and Neil Gaiman said it.
I know exactly what you're talking about, and Gaiman threw it right out the window.
Yeah, Death is a big concept.
That's wrong.
Yeah, I just assume like Death is like you know, the Black Racer is just the death of the new gods. You know, it's just whenever a god dies or something, you know, this guy shows up. Whenever like like if Superman dies, the fucking Black Racer's to show up. It's just kind of like, but.
Well, the big problem with it is that's a Jack Kirby character, and Gaiman did backflips to keep the Jack Kirby character and the original 1930s Sandman in his same continuity. And it worked out beautifully, but he did fucking backflips to make the previous two Sandman work, and I'm really disappointed that we've never got anything for the Black Racer in Death.
I feel like Morrison would be perfect for a Black Racer story now that you're talking about it.
Yeah, and I mean, he could probably make it work with Death. Like, maybe, the only explanation I can think of is he's the one that just gets the runners for her. It's the only thing I can think of, and it's such a lame-o one, but yeah.
Right.
You know, this is a retarded idea, but just, I'm sure Morrison won't do something this hackneyed, but, like, if you give it to a lesser writer, they'll just, like, you're just gonna have a short fucking scene where Death and fucking Black Racer are having coffee or whatever, and they just philosophize about bullshit. Like, that's what a bad writer would do.
Or they're fucking. Immature
man.
joke. Immature joke. You're welcome. I heard it actually. I hate to depart, but there's that really great scene where Death in her second big issue where she talks to the Metamorpho lady. She explains that when the universe is over, she'll close the door and turn off the lights, and then she's gonna just continue to exist even though the universe is gone. And someone like proposed a fan fiction for Death where it takes place after the universe has ended, and she's just been on her own at the end of the universe for like God knows how long, and like there's a literal door that she closed to end the universe, and she's just been alone in like a white void, and suddenly there's a knock on the door, and that was going to be their idea for the start of a Death fan fiction. Like, oh my god, that's really
terrifying. I would read the hell out of that.
Right?
Like, that's like, take my money now. Holy shit, that's good.
Yeah, I mean, you want to talk about world building? Okay, how do you build a world out of a non-existent universe?
It's just fuck.
Just if it's a whole bunch, just get a whole bunch of Heraclitus and Parmenides and make that your book.
Yeah, just have fucking what's his name? Like, since this is fucking fan fiction on the internet, just have Doctor Who show up and like, what the fuck are you doing there? I don't fucking know. It's just,
you have to say it just like that. The Doctor has to go, what the fuck are you doing here?
No, that's what Death does. Just like, well, I make sense. Why are you here? It's fucking fan fiction. Doesn't matter. Let's have a chat about life.
But to get back to the world building, I think part of the thing with world building is it's that idea of getting lost in your character's head. You do the same thing with your universe, where you get lost in the intricacies of how it's supposed to work, to the point where the story and the characters kind of fall away, and they're just there to exposit things about the world that you don't necessarily need to know, which I think is quite a bit of an issue with some of the Lord of the Rings stuff. Like, I like Lord of the Rings, not as much as most people, but the biggest problem I have with that series and the movies, and even Harry Potter to an extent, is that there are all these weird, awkward exchanges where characters need to talk or else you're just reading people walking for 6 hours. And
Harry Potter has
talk about things that don't matter and just build the world.
Harry Potter has it really bad because, for the first, I'd say 2 years, it's totally understandable that he doesn't know the intricacies of the wizard world.
Yeah.
But then you get like to movie 7, and Dobby's there to get him out of that trap that Bellatrix Lestrange put him in, and Harry Potter's like, "Wait, Dobby, you can transport us out of here?" And Dobby just gives him this look of like, "Yeah, you fucking moron, I'm an elf." And I'm like, Harry, you should know this shit by now, dude. You've been living in this world off and on for 10 years now. I
mean, that's just another issue with Harry Potter on its own, that Harry is a really shitty wizard. He, knows nothing until the very end of that series.
No, he still knows nothing by the end of that series. I have no idea how that dude became an aura. The only reason he was able to beat Voldemort was because he was the one.
Yeah, Harry is one of the worst wizards in that series. If anything, Hermione should have been the one to beat Voldemort.
That would have been such a great plot twist. Oh my god. No, seriously, yeah, that's one of the things is the first 2 movies, okay, or books, whatever, it makes perfect sense that he'd need people to constantly explain shit to him. And I'm like, okay, dude, you should know this by now. We need to find a different way to get exposition to the audience. I don't know. One of those, but yeah, that does become a problem where, and I wish more things would do the Star Wars thing of, just open your movie up with a scroll and let us know what we need to know. Because, books do it all the fucking time. You open a book and there's,
sits down, and reads that thing. Does anyone actually just, I don't fucking read that shit. I'm just fucking...
You don't read, an introduction chapter or whatever? Or, comic books do that.
If it's a book, then sure. If it's a fucking movie, I'm not gonna sit there and read, 45 minutes of text.
Well, it's on screen for 2 minutes, or not even that. It's on screen for 30 seconds, and it's just, it's almost a challenge because it's moving so fast. Or if you're not going to read it, then do narration. Say what you will about this movie, but I really did like the way that Green Lantern opened up, basically just explaining the lore of Green Lantern history in the Star Wars style of just space and exposition.
Yeah,
there you go.
It's the exact same thing, and I love that.
Yeah, I just wish more things would do that. And people go, oh, well, narration is a screenwriter's crutch. I'm like, fuck you. I don't want people to, awkwardly say the world to me. Why would anyone ever have that conversation? It'd be like if I explained money to Steve. Steve knows how money works. That's stupid.
Just to clarify, money is that magical piece of paper thing that I give to and people do things for me, right?
Yeah, I often, as silly as it sounds, I often have the thought of, what if I were to be the person that the aliens come to contact first? And, I just had to explain all the shit on Earth. I would be so bad at it. I would just not know how to tell them about shit.
Tell them about us. Tell them about us.
Yeah.
Who the fuck are we?
No, just imagine, aliens come down and ask you to explain, why do people pick up the poop that their dogs leave? And you have to try to explain, there's so much shit that you have to explain at that point. It'd be so hard. I hope to God it's not me that happens to. And I know that makes me sound crazy for multiple reasons, but still.
No, I totally understand where you're coming from. There's a point where there's just an infinite regress of explanations that you will never be able to get.
I know, right?
Even if you tell them just Google it, they will have to Google every answer they have already Googled.
You have to explain what Google is.
Yeah. And then what the internet is, and then why it exists, and why this runs that way, and why that goes that way.
See Al Gore and
yeah, it'd be a whole mess.
Yeah. So no, the idea of exposition in world building is such a fine line because the audience needs to know what the fuck is going on, but at the same time there is some fun to just the novelty of just being thrown in and figure it out for yourself. God damn it. Blade Runner does an okay job of that.
I think Blade Runner does a really good job of that. The problem, I think, is the book does some of that a little bit better just because it has more space.
Blade Runner does have the advantage of Sid Mead, who just, designed fucking everything, and it looks amazing.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's one of my favorite movies of all time.
Fair. I've only seen like half of it.
That's fair. I mean, it's not exactly the most exciting thing.
No, I was too young for it, and I've just never gotten around to it again, so
Wow.
No, but like that's one of the things. I guess what do you guys prefer? Do you prefer to just be thrown in, no explanation, no exposition whatsoever, or do you like a bit of exposition about the world?
It really depends on how it's done. If you have like some knowledge of what you're getting into, it could be a lot of fun if you do it right. But if you just throw people into a thing, like, I guess it depends on how old you are. If you're a young kid and you just throw somebody into some bullshit, they don't know what the fuck's going on. That's where you need exposition. But if you're like a bit older, like, yeah, I kind of get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm trying to think of a movie that, like, all of us can agree did a really good job of just throwing you in, no context, deal with it. Damn.
It's a little bit more difficult, yeah.
Yeah, most movies feel the need to, at least early on, explain the shit out of something.
Yeah.
I
mean, everything I'm thinking of has got a narrator at some point.
Right. I don't know. I'm sure something will come to us
Mad Max
eventually.
Fury Road?
I never watched that.
I mean, that's part of a franchise, so I guess it doesn't really count because the world building and exposition is there in previous movies.
But at the same time, if you haven't seen those, like myself, because I just don't give a fuck.
Yeah. I mean, if you just watch Fury Road on its own, it just throws you into the world, and you assume that this is a post-apocalyptic world that runs on nothing but fuel.
Okay.
So, I guess that... See, I don't remember if it does the thing the other movies do, because the other movies do this thing where they do like a faux black and white documentary thing that explains how the world ended, and then the movie starts. And I don't remember if Fury Road does that, because I haven't seen it in like 6 months.
Milan, any memories from you on that subject?
Fury Road is a visual movie. It's cool. It's a good movie. There's like women in it, and that's cool. And they kick ass.
I wasn't asking for a review of Fury Road. I was asking if you remember if they explained a bunch of shit in that.
Well, the thing is, it doesn't really need to explain a lot of shit. It's just essentially tribalism, but in the post-apocalypse. I mean, what more do you want? You got fucking heavy metal Darth Vader with his army of fucking skinhead tweaker boys, and he has water.
I was going to say It Follows, but It Follows has a whole section where they explain what it is.
Yeah, and it's just like...
Yeah.
The Crow. Crow doesn't explain anything.
Oh, Crow doesn't explain a goddamn thing.
Yeah, Crow is just a what you assume spirit of vengeance kind of thing that it throws you into. I guess that...
Yeah, I mean, like, isn't there... I know there's some narration in The Crow, but it doesn't really tell you anything. It's more of just like a mood piece.
Well, narration is like... The narration is all thematic. It's got nothing to do with how the world operates. It's just like sometimes people die and they come back, and that's the most vague thing you could possibly say, and then he shows up.
Yep, that's a good one.
Snowpiercer doesn't explain anything, I don't think.
Okay. I like things like that, where they just, okay, here's the shit, deal with it. And I wonder, like, if there's Fifth Element?
Maybe.
Yeah,
I feel like the moment this conversation ends, I'm going to have like 60,000 examples that I can't think of right now. Because I know other things do this, I just can't remember them right now.
I'm just curious if you could Transmetropolitan. Bam.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah, like, I'm wondering if there's like a limit to how far you could go without explaining a goddamn thing and just expect people to get it. Like, how alien can you get from what people are used to seeing?
I think...
Because, I mean, it's easy to just throw us in a world that is, exactly like ours, except, there's this guy as president instead. It's easy to throw you into a world when it's more familiar, but as you get further and further away from what we know now and what we're used to, like, how bizarre can you get until it's just completely impossible to understand what's happening.
I think Prometheus is that extreme example where it's just so alien that none of it makes any fucking sense. Because that movie doesn't explain jack shit, and when it explains, it does not explain with context.
Gotcha.
So maybe that, although I guess that could be remedied with a sequel if that ever actually happens.
Fucking aliens in such a weird place right now.
Yeah. That didn't this Prometheus sequel get renamed like 3 times?
I don't know.
I'm not keeping up with it, but I think that since we reviewed that movie just a little while ago, I guess that's the other thing that comes to mind.
Mm-hmm. No, we reviewed Alien, not Prometheus.
Oh right, yeah, Alien.
Yeah, I don't know. It's all really kind of vague to talk about them. I think video games do a pretty good job a lot of the time of just kind of throwing you in somewhere.
Yeah.
One of my favorite game series, Jack and Daxter, it's just shit just happens.
Yeah, that's a great example.
Like you're just, here's the world, go get us some power cells. Okay.
There was a Transformers game just a little while ago. Not a little while ago. Maybe it was probably like 5 years now. That was basically the Autobot Decepticon war before they got to Earth, and they didn't explain anything with that. So if that was your first Transformers thing, I think that would be a good example. Like, it's just a world, and there's robots, and everyone's at war. Go.
And I mean, it was certainly easier back in the day before video games could do, cutscenes and have much story. So, like, Sonic the Hedgehog, it just opens up, and you're just a fucking blue hedgehog in the middle of this forest. Now, go fast. Okay. And then Robotnik shows up for the first time, and you're like, wait, what, huh? I guess I jump at this guy. There's boss music playing, so that's what I must do.
Yeah. The Mega Man games are the exact same thing, where it's just like, you're a person, and now you're a digital person, or a digital person inside of a digital person.
I'm just thinking of Mr. Goodplot's video on that one weird-ass side-scroller. His robot just stopped and was like, what the hell? Because the guy basically just made a digital girlfriend. And this was a character you're supposed to just empathize with and help out, but whatever. Yeah, video games are an interesting place for world building, too, and I feel like we should talk about those for a little bit.
Yeah.
Because that's what it's all about, is like, instead of having people tell us about the world and seeing brief glimpses of the world with a character to focus on, you are the character and you're part of the world, and you determine what of the world you see for much of the game.
I think it's a sandbox thing, because I think the big difference for most video games is that its story is an excuse to do more world building, as opposed to world building being an excuse to tell a story.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And yeah, I mean, I obviously tend to gravitate more toward sandbox adventure games. Jack and Daxter series is probably my favorite video game series of all time.
It's really
and those were all, you just, whenever you beat the game, you could just run around and go almost to any location that you were at throughout the rest of the game, and you can just run around and do whatever you want until you get bored. And it takes quite a while, especially in the second and third game where you just start fighting cops.
Right.
And so it just gets all over the place, and you just challenge yourself to do this and find out this part of the world and explore this area. So I don't know, it's one of those interesting things. I think video games are probably, Steve, as you said, have a story that gives an excuse for world building as opposed to world building around a story. Interesting.
Yeah.
Milan, you take us somewhere. You've been pretty quiet. You haven't, taken us in any direction.
I don't know. Video games is just, it's a thing.
No, you don't have to talk about video games. Just world building somewhere.
As world building exercises, really what they are, what they've, there was this conversation between Opie and Anthony and Patrice O'Neill, and they were talking about like playing war video games, and how it was so real to them. You know, you have, you know, these like older men and they're like playing this shit and they're like, this is fucking insane. Like, they have the guy who is freaking out on the boat, like they're talking about this Call of Duty game where, you know, you're one of the soldiers, you know, going to Normandy, the beaches of Normandy, you're storming them. And they're talking about how freaky it is because you just see these representations of real people that, you know, old archetypes of those types of people. You know, the guy who was freaking out, the guy who's just smoking, the guy who's just like, you know, who's ready to die, and you're just, you know, you're playing it. And they're talking about...
How long until video games start giving you PTSD?
Exactly, no, but let me tell you. And you have these, back in the day, it was just fucking Pac-Man and shit. And now it's just gotten, like, you have no Batman Arkham Knight. And it's just like, you're fucking Batman. You're beating the fuck out of people. And it's just like, you build a world, and it's this little artificial reality. Artificial reality technology exists. It's just you don't put a thing on your head. And it's...
Now you do, though.
Yeah, now you do. But it's just such a weird thing, you know? This whole thing just kind of bothers me. Video games in general just kind of bother me. You know, it's just like they're fun, but, you know, when I was a kid, you think like, oh, you're going to see 2015, 2016, and there's going to be some grandiose technological leap. And there was a grand technological leap. You got video games and the internet, you know, and then it's just like, yeah, that's cool, I guess, but what about the flying cars and the space exploration and shit? Oh, well, it's fucking impractical. It's impractical. People are starving in the world. Yeah, nobody gives a fuck. And I'm just like, stop pretending. Don't stop using the starving people excuse not to go to space. It's just...
It's not really an excuse, but let's stay away from a topic that we already did, eh?
Yeah, but it's just like... With video games, like, it's fun, like, I don't play a lot of them, but it's just like, when I play, like, BioShock and whatever. And
BioShock is fantastic.
It is, it's just like, kind of like, you're thrown in, and it's just like, fucking, it's just, your exploration about capitalism, look, objectivism, pure, unbridled objectivism under the sea, and you have these drugs that give you superpowers, and everyone's a fucking crackhead. And
it is literally the coolest thing ever. I love BioShock.
It is. And you just pick up these little recordings of people, like, recording their thoughts, and you have, oh my god, this intelligent fucking, you know, founder of this city has just left a whole bunch of fucking recordings of his thoughts. All these characters that matter to the plot, or at least to the situation that you're in, just leave behind, you know, exposition that help shape the world, and it's cool, and it's just a cool thing that exists.
And see, like, it's interesting. I hate to do it, but you know how it is when you're watching something. It tends to like influence whatever you're gonna think about and talk about, and obviously the examples you're gonna pull up. But so, I would make the argument that Star Trek ahead of the curve made the argument for video games as art, because like, I don't know what else you would call a holodeck but a video game, just like a really, really advanced video game.
They kind of treat it like that in TNG, so...
Well, I mean, they treat it kind of like magic in TNG, and whoever invents those things should get their ass sued. But, it's like they never fucking work, man. I have a secret theory that is that the reason the holodeck always fucks up on the Enterprise but doesn't on DS9 is because on DS9 everyone uses it for porn, and on the Enterprise they use it for like these, you know, high-minded shit. So anyway, like, seriously, think about that. Holodecks, like, that's all they use them for on DS9 is porn and video game battles. That's it. And Vic Fontaine.
I'm not sure if either of you guys have ever watched Rick and Morty, but there's a great episode.
What is it? Stan was the name of the game or whatever?
Yeah, I think it's
Small
Stan.
Grid.
Yeah, I don't remember if that what it is exactly, but yeah, they've got that where you basically play as a person's entire life, and it raises some really interesting identity questions. But another interesting example from that show is Rick makes a tiny robot on the table to pass the butter, and then the robot says, "What is my purpose?" And he says, "You pass butter." And then the robot just kind of sits there staring at his hand and saying, "Is that all I am?" And Rick is just like, "Welcome to the club." And they just ended there, and I think the episode actually ends with the robot committing suicide.
Like, the thing is, Rick and Morty, like, Ian, you're a fucking nihilistic son of a bitch. Rick and Morty is just like, it's something for Ian, you know, when you just have no
I've
hope.
seen clips, and I do want to watch the whole show, because
There's no hope in the world.
It's such a good I love it.
It's such a good world, and it's just like, it just retarded things happen. It's Lovecraftian horror done as comedy.
If we're talking about examples where they don't explain anything, you watch Rick and Morty, there isn't an explanation for jack shit. Things just happen.
Just don't think about it. Just don't think about it, you know? There's this wonderful little scene when they're running away, and you have this little, like, germ-like creature, like, coming all the way, like, it's like a time lapse of this little creature running with Rick and Morty, and he gets, you know, he's a baby, then he's a fucking grown man, then he's an old man, then he dies of a heart attack, and, you know, Morty just looks and goes like, what the fuck is going on? And Rick's just, don't think about it. Existentialism, man. Don't think about it. Trust me.
And it's weird, because, like, I think this has almost become a video more about exposition, and yet at the same time, the two are almost like, I can't really imagine having a conversation about world building without talking about exposition, or vice versa. I think they go hand in hand. And so video games are an interesting thing to me, because it's up to you a lot of the time to fill in a lot of the gaps, you know?
The thing is, history is useful exposition. You know, it's the type of exposition that you can actually make a living at. And, you know, we have this thing called the world, and we could all die. Like, you know, all it would take is just one little asteroid hitting the North Pole. The whole fucking planet will be flooded in an afternoon. And, like, boom, fucking less than 1,000 people left on the planet. And nobody reads books anymore. Everyone's on all your fucking information is digitized, more or less. And, like, you know, 100 years, like 200 years, 500 years later after the collapse, people find an iPhone. And they're like, what the fuck is this? People used to fucking transmit their thoughts on this thing. What the fuck is this thing? You know? Like, what the fuck, man? We're fucking retarded. We should go to space, not, you know, in some sort of vain hope that, you know, like, we could die. All of us.
We're not having this conversation again. You lost.
I think...
No, not I lost. The species has lost. We're a fucking useless species. We're like that dude
and we'd be a useless species on Mars.
Yeah, but at least we'll be on Mars. For fuck's sake. That's the thing. Like,
because I think you brought up, Mars is a good example, but if either of you guys have watched The Martian, have you or no?
Yeah, I loved it.
Oh yeah, that movie is fucking great. But The Martian has some pretty interesting points where, and since we were bringing this to exposition, because that's a movie that requires advanced science, they have to have points where characters just speak or regurgitate scientific fact to us to try and explain how things work. But I think that's one of the best examples of making it feel like natural dialogue. And I think the sort of subtle world-building element around that is when you get to all those Matt Damon scenes where he's by himself and he's just recording, like, for lack of a better word, vlogs of how he's surviving on the planet and how he's making potatoes and how his little bubble of a universe works for him.
You know, the captain's vlog is much less cooler than the captain's log. Because it just immediately gives you the image of, like, Kirk sitting in the chair talking to his iPhone.
I would watch that.
That's the thing. We have that thing. Everyone has this thing. Everyone, it's this weird, you know, everyone used to think trees. Back in the day, we used to think trees, and that's why all our gods were like, eat, fuck, kill, sleep. You know. Now our gods are just what are our gods? You know, we have no gods. Atheism is money is a god. The internet is a god. Capitalism is a god. Self-interest is a god. Everyone's their own god, but everyone's they live. Yeah.
They Live is an interesting movie where they do eventually explain everything, but for quite a while you don't know what the fuck is going on, and you're just experiencing that weird-ass world with that character. They Live could have been genius, but it's just not. They Live could have been an amazingly intelligent movie, but it just isn't. I don't know what happened.
I think they were just trying to, that's the thing. I think fiction is just popular fiction is just, like, it's like a pill for the species, you know? When you have, like, big ideas and you have to market those big ideas. You can't, like, the movies like The Martian and Interstellar, like, they're great, they're visually stunning, but fucking normal people don't go and see that. They're like, yeah, it's a good movie, but average motherfuckers, they go see that, I'm like, it's boring, it's about space and shit. But, like, when They Live...
Yeah, I mean, I remember walking out of Gravity and people go, oh, it was so boring. I'm like, really?
Wow. I hate that reaction. Yeah. I love Gravity. Such a good movie.
Yeah, and I'm like, it works in Martian and Gravity both work on the same thing, which is that's what you're required to do if you're in that situation. Like, if you're the only one conscious on $1 million space probe, you're required to leave logs and tell people what you're doing, even if they're not going to see it, because it's just you're supposed to do it. They train you to always do that.
Yeah, just in case you die, up there in space.
And if you haven't seen it, Duncan Jones' Moon is basically that same thing, and it's also brilliant.
I think I've heard of that one, but I've never gotten around to it.
It's the same guy that did, what's it called, Source Code.
Yeah,
I thought so.
Isn't it the same guy who played Harvey Milk?
No.
Isn't it? Is it by the same director?
I don't think so.
Do those movies have anything in common at all?
I don't think so.
No, I think that it was the same actor. The same actor who played the guy in the movie.
I forget who was in Moon. Was that Sam Rockwell?
I don't even know, man. I don't even know.
Whatever. This is world building. So who else is disappointed that we're not talking about, like, Man of Steel with, like, the world engine or what do you call that? Terraforming. Why didn't we do a video about terraforming, Steve?
Oh, that's a really good idea.
Yeah, terraforming is a great thing, but that's the thing. Man of Steel is a lot more smart than people give it credit for. It's like, no, look, yeah, it's fucking punch a man in the face into the building, 9/11, whatever. But it's just like, yeah, like, you look at fucking, like, Superman's supposed to be the embodiment of the best America has got to offer, And that's what immigrants see Superman as. That's, like, the best thing America has, Superman. And look at fucking Krypton. Instead of being this grandiose race, instead of being, Western Europe after World War II, it's now just, it's essentially America in a couple of years. Or the planet, our planet. We're just going to mine everything and then it's just going to explode. And we're going to go, we should have fucking terraformed other planets and spread ourselves out. But now we're just going to send a baby out into
Milan,
space.
What is up with you? Why do we keep going back to this conversation?
Because it's 2016, it's the future, and nobody gives a fuck. How is that not terrifying? How are you not just emotionally destroyed by that fact that the human race has failed fundamentally as a species?
I had that crisis like a year ago, and I'm recovering from it, so I guess I just don't think about it that way now.
Well, that's the thing. Nobody thinks about it. If you think about it, you're fucking...
Lon, we've had this conversation. You lost. It's okay.
That's the thing. Look, I did not lose. The species has lost.
We have,
fucking-
but that's
We
okay.
have. But what's the point then? What's the fucking point? If the
Universe doesn't need our trash.
No, but fuck the universe. We are the universe. We look at that thing and we give it fucking meaning. What's our function then? What do we fucking do? Why are we here? Do we just live and then we die and that's it?
I'm gonna mail you a book, and when you get the book and finish reading it, we can continue the conversation. But for now, we can go.
Fuck you, you educated son of a bitch. You tell me now.
I can't summarize an entire 400-page book while I can.
Fucking do it. It's a fucking challenge. Do it, motherfucker.
I mean,
I'm talking about world building.
Do it, Steve. Do a tweet-based summation, no more than 140 characters of this 400-page book.
Okay. The world is a mirror, and therefore, the more you improve your image, the more you improve the world.
Oh.
That makes sense, but then again...
Unpackage that into like 100 different things, but that's the essence, I guess.
But making bombs and setting them off in crowded areas for no real reason makes perfect sense then. You would agree to that, right?
Yes, but that's not the point.
There you go! Fucking thank you!
But
Justification, that's all I needed.
Anyway, back to world building. So I think one thing I wanted to have answered before we finish this, 'cause I'm not sure how long we've been at it, but if you could pick any universe to live in, what would it be?
Like, fictional universe?
Yes, any fictional universe that you've read.
Okay, because I was about to say any universe. Well, the one that has all the boobies.
The one where I'm Batman, no.
No, because then my parents are dead, and that's not cool.
Any fictional universe.
What's a superhero that's got, like, a nice, well-adjusted family life?
The
what?
Wesley Dodd Sandman?
Okay. No, because that turns out to be, like, a horrible thing, and, like, it's demons tricking him and stuff. No. Anyway. Okay, any fictional universe to live in. Well, shit. See, the thing is, they're always all under, like, horrible threat.
It's tough.
I feel like Cracked has done a video on this, which is, like, the best fictional universe to live. I guess Star Trek, just because everything seems to be going really well as long as you're on Earth. Like, occasionally you got the Borg threat or whatever, but otherwise that seems to get taken care of fairly often, so... Yeah, I guess Star Trek, in between, you know, the eras of note. Like, there's 75 years between Kirk and Picard. That's where I want to be, where everything's just nice and normal and perfect. You live on Earth, it's a paradise, every single problem you could possibly have is taken care of, and your entire mission is to just better yourself. Well, I'm gonna better myself by sitting down and eating some motherfucking Oreos. I'm gonna go hang out on a working holodeck and have sex with fucking whatever I feel like. That seems like a good way to better myself.
That sounds like the most depressing thing I've ever fucking heard in my entire life.
But there's no drama. It's a nice, stable, boring time in history for that version of the universe, and you can just do whatever you want on Earth because there's no money, and somehow that works.
But then what's this point? I mean, if you have everything, then...
Go on, you can go exist on a holodeck which is so realistic that people are legitimately unable to tell the difference between that and reality at points, to the point where they have to make a psychological condition, like a new diagnosis. You can just hang out there and do whatever the fuck you want. How is that not awesome?
That's soul-destroyingly sad.
I don't know, it frees up a lot. Milan, what is your answer then?
I would just sooner... I don't even know. Fuck, man. I'd live in Gotham.
Fuck that.
Nah, it's great. You'd be fucking...
Fuck it, just move to Detroit then.
I will. Fuck it. It's just great. Fucking... It just makes perfect sense. Everyone's always fucked up on drugs. There's a 9/11 every other day. There's a... fucking crime and shit. It seems like... Where I live now just seems like this... Where I live now is Suicide Slum. And it's just like, it's the ghetto...
Suicide Slum in Metropolis?
Exactly. You know, it's just like, you live in Suicide Slum and people think you're fucking trash. You're fucking garbage. You go to Metropolis and people just look at you like you're scum. And it's just like, fucking ghetto rat coming up here to the golden rafters of Metropolis. How fucking dare you? You know? And then you're just like, I want to burn your house down. And they're like, oh, we're going to put you in prison. Why? I didn't do it. I was just thinking about it. But anyway, Gotham seems like a perfectly rational place to live.
How about you, Steve? What's your universe of choice?
Mine would be the Looney Tunes universe. Because nothing makes any fucking sense, and that's just the way I like it. I can be shot in the face with a gun, and it's alright.
Have you ever played Sheep Raider?
I haven't.
Oh, you'd love that game. It's a puzzle game that works on Looney Tunes physics.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah. It's one of my favorite games. I want to bring Let's Plays back, but first let's get back to normal episodes.
Yeah.
And then I'll try to get back to my whole one Let's Play a month thing.
Yeah, let's ease back into a schedule. But no, yeah, the Looney Tunes world universe would be fun, because at that point I don't have to worry about anything. The other answer would have been like the Dragon Ball Z universe, but then the entire world could end and I wouldn't even realize it.
Yeah,
but
and
then
like
again,
anytime you hear
it
someone
gets
saying,
killed.
put up your hands, give me your energy, you're like, fuck. And then you gotta do that.
Yeah.
And it just takes, like, it's like you run a mile, that just happens like every other week. And then there are like so many craters, there's no usable land.
Yeah, if I wasn't a Saiyan, I'd be fucking useless, so...
Right?
It's just one of
Yeah.
those things. So the Looney Tunes...
Except for that one time TN does that thing to sell. I've finally watched Dragon Ball Z Abridged, like, after years of hearing about it. People never properly explained it to me, because they'd always called, it's a terribly named series, because I was always under the assumption it was just a shortened version of Dragon Ball Z that took out all the filler.
No, that's Kai.
Yeah, but that's clearly what the name implies, and no one ever told me that it was fucking hilarious. So yeah, I watched all of Dragon Ball Z Abridged, and it's amazing. And, like, it might actually be better than the show.
The best joke in that entire series of videos is the Frieza episode. Not Frieza, the Cooler episode they do, where Cooler's like, someone better pick up that phone, because I fucking called it!
I don't know, my favorite was Bulma and Vegeta conceiving Trunks. Because they're like, Bulma's like, wait a minute, what happened to your condom? The fuck's a condom? Vegeta's like Vegeta's a bigger asshole than Archer, if that's possible. So he's fucking working out, and Bulma's trying to get him to come back inside, and he goes, you stupid whore, I've got to get stronger than Goku. And she says, quit calling me stupid. And he goes, fine, how about bitch?
Frieza's coming to kill Vegeta. Wait, my son, the planet, or me? Yes. Fucking smart ass.
Yes, I'm very much enjoying that. I can't believe they're still going. They're right in the middle of the Cell stuff. They just posted an episode, actually.
Yeah,
but
something.
yeah. Like, I mean, to answer your question in, I guess, a serious way, a fictional universe that would be interesting to live in, because, like, I just answered with the one that would be, the easiest to live in. Let's see here. Fictional universe that I could conceivably live in and do well. Man, that's hard. The Doctor Who universe seems to be interesting, and things tend to work out fairly well overall, so I guess I'd take that one.
Yeah.
Things tend to work out overall in Doctor Who, so yeah, sure.
I think my only worry with worlds like that is that reality tends to unravel quite a bit.
Yeah.
And not being able to realize that would always bug me. Like, at any given second, I could have forgotten the entire universe ending. Yeah. And that weirds me out.
Yeah, and, like, you have, like, the DC and Marvel universe where, like, there's an apocalyptic event every year, and you're just like, yeah, I'm not comfortable with that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like... Yeah, the fabric of reality, the fabric of reality just breaking apart because of some motherfucker. I mean, God bless the fucking superheroes. Like, you love them, like, they save the universe all the time, but it's just like, for fuck's sake, man.
Well,
You
Steve,
know?
I guess the other thing is, like, how do you know that's not already the case for the universe you're living in now? If, like,
Yeah. No, I thought
you know,
that.
if reality almost ends, but at the last minute is saved and all comes back together, and you're none the wiser about it, how would you know that's not already the case?
It could have happened in the middle of this conversation, and we have no idea.
Yeah, and then you get into the idea of, like, what if the universe started 5 minutes ago and we all just have false memories? And, like, that's what really makes me question, like I always talk about this, but I really am very skeptical about some of the claims that I hear, like, these theoretical physicists make and stuff, because I'm like, how could you possibly prove that? Like, the numbers check out. I'm like, what kind of weird-ass numbers are you working with to get to this kind of conclusion? I don't understand.
I think fucking astrophysicists and all these fucking guys that play around with the fabric of reality, I just think they just all take acid and then just bullshit to the fucking board of
write it all
directors.
down.
Just like, yeah, man, fucking reality, because the majority of what they have to say just seems like the shit you see when you take drugs. And I'm like, yeah, that's weird. But it makes perfect
Mr.
sense
Popo
in some...
took, like, an entire gallon of acid. Like, I didn't even realize you could get a hold of that much. Kami, I need you to tell me that I can leave the watchtower anytime I want. Of course you're gonna... No, I just need you to tell me that. Mr. Popo, you can leave the watchtower anytime you want. Don't you fucking tell me what to do. Okay. This is getting really, really silly. Did anyone else have anything else they wanted to mention with world building, or any final thoughts they wanted to get out?
You know,
No?
building a world... No, I think I have something. Building a world takes a lot of work, you know, but if you do it right, it can be very rewarding, you know, especially in a fictional universe. If you make something good, you can draw people in. That's the thing. Humans kind of build little artificial realities, and we build real realities. We just make things. And, you know, the greatest thing you can do is make a reality that's good.
Mm-hmm.
And fun to live in, or at least interesting.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting to see how often things are, like, accidentally creating entire worlds that expand, because you have a lot of properties that, like, start out as just kind of a really basic idea, and then they get expanded out further and further because they just demanded their own world to be created. And that's kind of where I started on this, is I often say, like, with Inception, I've been saying for years that I want a goddamn sequel just because that world is so fascinating. And, you know, it just doesn't need to be Cobb's character. It needs to be, like, a spin-off. I always find that interesting, is how someone can create a really fascinating world, and then it can be expanded on to other things and just take on a life of its own past what the original creator ever intended, because, I mean, that's what happened with Batman and Superman and stuff. So, yes, just world building is a really interesting thing, and it can just become its own beast that never ends at a certain point, and that's just really neat. And it's a good thing that we should support. But, you know...
Is it?
Do it well. Yes, it is. Steve, anything to wrap up on? Yes, I am.
I think I'm good. The big thing is that world building is not something I necessarily always need to be exceptional. Like, I don't go into a movie or a book or a comic expecting myself to get lost in the little idiosyncrasies of how the universe functions. But when that happens, it just makes everything so much better.
Yeah.
Like, I love the first two Harry Potter movies. I love the first two books. The characterization stuff is great. The interaction's great. The acting's great for the most part. But then it's just something about watching Harry's eyes glow when all of the food's flying into the dining area and the pictures are talking to him and the architecture of Hogwarts and all that makes all of that mean more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree, and it's just really fucking cool to watch.
Yeah.
Okay, next week we need a review topic. Milan, pick a review topic.
The obsolescence of the human... What? What's obsolescent about humans?
A review, Milan.
Let's just review humanity. Fuck it.
No, I need an actual thing that we can review.
Plus, I think
because humanity... You can't review something until it's over, and so far, last I checked...
Okay, The Martian.
If you review something before it's over, it's called heckling.
Oh, all right then. The Martian.
The what?
The Martian.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I'm totally down for that. I love that movie.
Is that out on DVD yet?
No, but we can still watch it.
Okay, we'll figure something out.
I got a link.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. Okay. Well, everyone, thanks very much for listening. Until next time, I'm the philosopher.
I'm the politician, I think. Is that still my title?
If you want to change it, you can at any time.
Okay. Well, no, I'll go with that. I was just curious. It's been so long that I forgot what I was.
And I'm the Madman.
And we are your geeky gentlemen, and we will be discussing things.